Welcome to Queen City News Plus. We got order in the court today. I'm anchor Brian Blakely.
And I'm Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes.
Always good to see you, buddy. How are we doing today?
I got no complaints, man. If our voice is complaining, the vocal cords are saying no, but the body is saying yes, so we'll figure
Let me guess, you were yelling at your son's wrestling match.
Yes and no. So coming out of that trial, my voice is already on its way down.
Ah, that's right. You had a trial.
I mean, you're in there talking for weeks. It's going to go out. But yes, the back-to-back matches in the tournament, yeah, it didn't help.
Obviously, you're not a very quiet parent.
Not even a little bit. I am an active participant, so much so that I almost got kicked out this weekend, and it was not my fault. That's all I'll say.
Explain.
Well, unsportsmanlike conduct.
You're making your case. You're pleading your case, right?
Unsportsmanlike conduct from another kid. We all handled it like pros and didn't even say anything. It was to their coach said something, and we were like, man, you got to kind of raise them up better than that. And as a parent, I shouldn't even be involved in that conversation. The ref reminded me that I shouldn't be involved in that conversation and summarily asked me to go back to the stands, which I did.
That time,
yeah. But hey, we are here to support and clap and cheer, and maybe that's about it. So.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious! I love it. And yes, I knew your son had a big wrestling match. I was at a baseball tournament for PG area code games all week. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We won the silver championship in a comeback.
Man, the best part about being a parent, right? It's being there for these guys.
It's so fun to watch. Well, let's talk about the cases that we got today. Of course, order in the court, 3 cases that we got. The court is in session right now. First one we're going to double up on today, and that is the big story that's happening around Charlotte. Started over the weekend, and that is with Border Patrol coming to Charlotte and doing their enforcement operations, as they call them, targeted operations that they had, mainly targeting construction sites and other businesses around Charlotte. As of Monday morning, 130 people were arrested, Khalif. But where are we legally now with due process and what we've been seeing? Because some of the scenes that we've had here that have also been released on video here from Homeland Security have been quite disturbing.
Disturbing is an understatement, Brian. So let me start with this. This isn't ICE. This is Border Patrol. Border Patrol normally has the authorization to deal with the border within a 100-mile zone of the border. Charlotte falls out of that zone. However, the Border Patrol can go out and act under federal law in an active investigation. And so that's what the Trump administration is going and saying, that they're in the midst of an active investigation, pointing to the law, U.S. 1357 gives them nationwide authority to do that. And what can they do with that authority? They can question individuals about immigration status, conduct immigration-related investigations, and detain individuals based on reasonable suspicion of civil immigration violation. Remember, entering the country and your mere presence being here illegally is a civil violation. So that is what Border Patrol is doing here. Now, what we're seeing on the video does look like something different. And so I have to remind folks when they're having these types of encounters that we have something called the Constitution. Our Constitution gives us our Fourth Amendment right protections, specifically that in the police, any type of law enforcement agency, and Border Patrol would fall under that category, does not have the right legally to enter your property, your land, your anything like that, unless they have a warrant or unless there is a slight, or you give them authorization, warrant or authorization. There is a slight exception to both of those situations, and that would be if they are chasing after a person that's attempting to flee. It's this hot pursuit exception, typically for law enforcement.
Chicken or the egg here, though. Who created the suit there? Because a lot of people are fleeing when they do see Border Patrol, and we've seen a lot of those videos. And the question, too, is they are saying that Border Patrol is that a lot of the people that they have been arrested are, one, in the country illegally, but they are also criminals that have warrants out for their arrest.
Yeah, I mean, but they haven't given us any hard numbers on that. So their Border Patrol chief said
no evidence
recently,
to support their claims.
Right. Only the 6 folks that he talked about so far, when there was an arrest recently, that there were 6 of those individuals, he said, had criminal history. But out of the 100 plus that you talked about, there's been no statistics showing what criminal history they have. And let's be honest, that line of statement, that line of rhetoric that comes out, and I'm just being clear with this, is to support these types of activities, that it's the means justifies the ends. Well, we're doing the job of removing these people that are in this country illegal. Oh, and by the way, because we're removing them that when they're illegally here, they're also violent criminals. But the statistics don't support that. So if you make that statement, there are some people that feel safe and justified in knowing that you're removing violent criminals. But if 95% of these folks aren't criminals, not just aren't violent, but aren't criminals, and you're removing people that are just here that haven't done any violation, then yes, this right here doesn't justify the ends. And then the arresting and detaining of lawful citizens, people that have a right to be here, people that are American citizens, that's even further problematic because the instance with the guy getting his window broken, that incident right there is probably one of the most disturbing incidents that you can think of. Why? Because you have this guy that has a lawful right to be here. And so I treat it like any other scenario where a person's talking about engaging with law enforcement. Do they have a right to stop you? Is there reasonable suspicion that a crime has occurred? Not that a civil violation has occurred, but that a crime has occurred. And so most of these interactions that they have with folks are voluntary. Hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Can I stop you for a minute? Then you have a right to lawfully say no. And that is your constitutional right. That is a protection that's afforded to you for anybody. And that's what's not happening in a lot of these things because they'll come under the rules of, hey, we're investigating. Well,
what if you do say no? Because we've seen that so many people that do say no, then they say, well, I need to see your documentation or it's not stopped right there.
There has to be, you have a right to remain silent. You have a right to refuse and consent to search. You have a right to ask to be leave. If detained, you must do what basically in all detentions, you have to comply. I said this the other day, that you have to have the ability, you have to comply with whatever the requirements are. If they are saying to the magic question, am I being detained? And their answer is yes, then now you have to stay, you can't flee, and you do have to answer their questions. But their detention has to be based on and rooted in something. And so I gave you the authority that they have, right? But it also has limitations. It can't be based on race. It can't be based on a protected class or status. And those are some of the things that seem to be happening with these types of arrests, going to locations and targeting specific groups and specific individuals where it doesn't seem to be a broad swipe, but it does seem to be pinpoint and specific in its approach.
It's definitely pinpoint and specific. When you're talking about construction sites, they're targeting subcontractors that have been at many of these places, many businesses, especially in East Charlotte. We do know that some businesses are even shut down. And we do know that once they do get a hold of some of these people and have arrested them, putting them in zip ties, and the immigrants, if they have some sort of criminal record, which is what they're claiming right now, is what Border Patrol, they will be housed here in Charlotte and then shipped off to a big immigration facility that they have in Georgia before they are deported to who knows where, not even known for the country of their origin.
Unfortunate, dark, sad time, not just for the city of Charlotte, for the state of North Carolina, but for America as a whole. And I want to be clear with this. This is what you read about in school when you looked at things like Nazi Germany, when they were saying, show me your papers, right? Folks are walking around with their papers to show that, hey, I am a lawful American citizen, either American born or naturalized. I'm either a green card holding citizen. And if you don't have your papers, you're terrified. And so it's either
seen it in all the movies, show me your papers.
Right.
Show me your papers.
Be in fear of being disappeared, right?
Fear, yeah.
Like that, because if you're going to work one day and you're gone the next, you got a family that's sitting there looking for you. Right now, that impact is massive on our community. And let's talk about how that impact looks, Brian. First of all, you have a number of folks that are being taken into these vans that are unmarked by agents most of the time that are unmarked in regular plain clothes with masks on. So that is first what we're having. So you have the fear of that period, but then you have the fear of being taken away to some other country that you don't even know of and have never been to. But let's talk about the impact that it will have on our community. The impact that it will have when people just decide, I'm going to take myself out of the community. I won't participate in the community anymore because of that fear. Now, I'm not going to go to work. I'm not going to go to my job. So if you got a location that's being built right now, some of those folks have decided, hey, I'm not going. I went to my cleaners today for my dry cleaner, and there were 10 people in line, Brian. 10 people. You know what they said? He was apologizing to everyone. And this person was an American citizen, was apologizing to everyone because the company they outsourced was an Asian company. And the owner of that company said 90% of his staff didn't show up. And these are folks that are American citizens, but they're deciding that I don't want to chance it. I'm not going out there. I'm just not going to go to work. And so all those folks, he had to tell them, you won't be able to get any of your clothes back this week because we don't know when they'll ever get to them. That is the real life impact. And while I know that's small, pales into comparison to the real impact that this is having on these people's families, the secondary effects of this type of thing is going to be disastrous on economies and communities because there is a lack of trust that will be torn down and will be hard to be repaired.
Let's talk about that further when we go to the break here on the other side. We'll talk about the impacts that it is having on Charlotte, the economies that have happened, and also schools. We've seen a lot of people not show up for class today. Businesses are shut down. Also, City Council is going to be talking about that later on tonight and the true impact of that. And what's the cost of Border Patrol being here? And also, the flip side of that is, are we as a society here ridding ourselves of dangerous criminals that are going to be off the streets, which is what the Trump administration has claimed. And Border Patrol, Greg Bovino, who is from North Carolina, as he has claimed that that's what is happening right now. Let's talk about that a little bit on the other side. We'll be right back here watching Order in the Court on Queen City News Plus. Welcome back to Order in the Court on Queen City News Plus. You got Khalif and Brian here. We are continuing to talk about the Border Patrol here that are doing their enforcement operations in Charlotte. Over 100 people have been detained, arrested so far over the last 3 days of the operation, where we are taping right now today. Expected to continue for the rest of this week. This is a Monday. You will see this later on throughout the rest of this week. Khalif, we're talking about the impacts that it's having on Charlotte. We do know that the Manolo's Bakery is one place that is shut down because they had somebody arrested right outside their front door. And it was the fear factor that you're talking about. Schools, East Charlotte, people, East Mecklenburg High School, people are not coming to school there, and many other schools. They're also protesting there about the Border Patrol as being in town. And then City Council is going to be talking about it tonight. The impact that it's having on the community right now is far-reaching.
Give me your tire, you're poor, right? That's what it says at the foot of the Statue of Liberty. The New Colossus is the name of that poem that was written. Why? Because America is supposed to be the land of the free, the home of the brave, and the place of opportunity. So you have these folks that come here, like the owner of Manolo's Bakery, who I would consider as a friend of mine. That individual has provided desserts for my family for Thanksgiving the last 4 years in a row. I've bought snacks for here from that location. And what I can tell you is he has probably one of the biggest hearts that I've ever met. How so? Well, when Ukraine war hit out, he was giving donations of thousands of dollars and sending things over there because he wanted to support people in trouble. But now the same individual has to shut down for the first time in 20 years almost. Why? Because fear? Because he doesn't want to put, as he said, I don't want to put my employees and my customers in danger. Not saying that I have illegals that are working for me, and I don't even like that term. Not saying that I have undocumented individuals that are working for me, and I'll be honest, I don't like that term either. Why? Because it's this show me your papers effect. Because I have folks that are non-U.S. citizens, maybe that's the best way that I can say it, but because of that, now this person has had a huge impact on the community, on society, now has to remove himself from there so that he can have the impact that he was having. Well, he is the American dream. Someone that could come here with nothing and start something and provide individuals with opportunities to be able to do great things here. So for me, it is troubling at the least to say that we've had an individual like him have to shut down momentarily. I know he won't disappear, but as any business owner, a small business owner knows, you need the doors open to make money. The doors darn open, the money doesn't come in. And so my heart goes out to individuals like this. And we have this effect where we attempt to try to make it seem like this doesn't touch us. That because it's somewhere else, some far off distance place, I don't have to think about it. But this is right here in our backyard. We're looking at this on a daily basis. These are our neighbors. These are our friends. These are people that our children go to school with, or like you said, maybe don't, because the kids aren't going to school. So those are problems. I have a middle schooler. We got 4 kids, but one of mine's a middle schooler. And when this first started happening, she said, a lot of my friends aren't coming to school. That's real life impact. So they have to grow up knowing that at one point in our history, we had a time where our government had kids that were scared to go to school because they were fearful that they may not come back. That's a problem.
On the flip side, there are the Trump administration and Gregory Bovino from Border Patrol says we are ridding ourselves of the dangerous criminals in Charlotte, and that there are warrants out for these people that have slipped through the net. They are in here in the country illegally, and we are making the city safer from crime and from these immigrants that are not here legally.
Make America great again, make America healthy again, make America safe again. You can throw any type of riddle behind it that you want, but at the end of the day, you're making America fearful again. Now, if the statistics supported that the Trump administration was removing on a high number individuals that were of the crime nature, or of the violent crime nature, then I think that there would be no outcry. But because there's no transparency, because you don't have any numbers statistically to support the removal process, show me what you did in Chicago. You arrested a whole bunch of folks there. How many of those folks were criminals? How many of those individuals had a criminal history? How many of those individuals had a violent criminal history? Because again, that type of statement, that rhetoric is an attempt to justify what we're doing, that the fear is warranted. And as someone that knows a little bit about how that process works with people coming in and out of the criminal justice system, I can tell you fear dictates, fear motivates. When people are fearful, everyday American citizens, they will allow you to do anything.
Sometimes the whole process, which is part of the whole agenda, the design for this.
It is definitely designed for this, which is, hey, President Trump has stated this from the very beginning.
That is the wanted byproduct of ridding yourself, making the community safer.
He said from the very beginning that I will have the largest deportation process in American history. And one thing I could say is he has been a man of his word. That across this country in locations from New York City, Chicago, D.C. to now Charlotte, ICE, Border Patrol, and anyone else is coming to advance that effort. But in the interim, there will be impact, secondary effects that will be longer lasting than this administration.
One of the things also I want to talk about here, too, is that Governor Josh Stein said, please videotape as much as you can of the actions, the enforcement actions that are done by Border Patrol. We've seen people breaking glass doors. We've seen people arrested outside of businesses here. What rights do you have legally for people that are videotaping when you're being told not to?
Same as law enforcement.
Being agitated not to do it.
Same. These individuals, and this is what I got to be clear, ICE agents are just like any law enforcement agent. And so if CMPD was arresting someone, I couldn't record that as long as it's in public space. So, for instance, we're watching this. Yeah, it's in a store parking lot, but it's a public space. There's no expectation to privacy. And if the individual with the camera walked over to the car and started recording them, that may be a little different. Most of the time there is a designated zone that would be, the police zone, and you'd be outside of that. But here, ICE isn't creating a zone. Most of the time, again, they're pulling up in these random unmarked vehicles and arresting folks and detaining folks. And so if there is an established zone, obviously don't go inside of whatever their established zone is. But for the most part, if you're attempting to record from a distance that's far off, I would agree with the governor, which is that you have a right to do that as an American citizen. You have a right to videotape and record law enforcement working. You should do that because that's showing you where your taxpayer dollars are going. That's transparency, that's accountability, and that is what you have a right to be able to do.
We're going to be talking about it a little bit more in City Council. We're going to have to leave our conversation right there, and we're going to be talking about something else when we come up after the break. But we'll continue that conversation as you're watching Order in the Court with Khalif and Brian. Welcome back to Order in the Court. You got Khalif and Brian here on Queen City News Plus. And our last topic today, we are going to be talking about a U.S. appeals court here that could be weighing whether to revive more than 500 lawsuits. And it involves the link between autism and Tylenol, and discuss this a little bit further because the Trump administration, first off, researchers, Khalif, as you know, did not find any link between Tylenol and autism. The Trump administration has come out to say that there is a link between Tylenol and autism, and now that it's really accelerated a lot more lawsuits that were once in question. So now there's a lot more to be answered about this.
We get to this point, Brian, because at some point there was a case in a number of cases, 500 plus lawsuits, and they were dismissed. And the lower trial court judge decided that, hey, the evidence that was presented, the arguments that you presented, your expert, your scientific expert at the time, and this is at the lower court decision, I don't agree with. I don't believe it was based on science. And because of that, I'm going to dismiss your claim. And so that opens up the door for this scenario here, where now you have an individual that will open, or I should say, a panel of courts of appeal judges that will listen to this hearing. And the first thing you have to do is have a final judgment on the lower court. Final judgment, order dismissing the claim, or a specific applicable order. Well, we have that. They filed this notice within the 30 days from that time, and then they say that they intended to appeal. So all of this was anticipated that they would appeal. Now, what do you need to point to? Well, first of all, you'd want to point to that, yes, we had our hearing, but the judge didn't just not like us, but they got it wrong when they made their determination. Their application of our expert's opinion wasn't applied to this case properly. And that's what they're attempting to say. And they're also using a lot of, as you mentioned, what the Trump administration is saying. So in their brief, typically you would see case law. Typically you would see scientific studies and facts. You'd see other courts ruling on this issue maybe after your case has occurred and before your appeal's taking place. But in this case, what we're seeing is a lot of what the Trump administration is saying is in their brief, citing the Trump administration's September White House press conference as the reason and rationale as to why there is a link between autism and Tylenol. That is what they're relying on. And the science doesn't support it, as the lower court judge ruled, that there needs to be something more than the Trump administration, who are not doctors, stating this is the reason that your case should go forward. The Court of Appeals now will have to make a determination if they'll listen to the doctors or they'll listen to what the Trump administration is saying.
And I was going to say, how much longer is that going to be? Because this is going to drag on. Or will there be settlements out of this?
I mean, at some point, there will be a settlement. But I think in this case, and I tell you that all the time, Tylenol is like anyone else. They'll have a risk assessment. They'll have someone come in and tell you, what are we doing to mitigate this? How much does litigation cost? And at the end of the day, is the cost of litigation more than the cost that we can pay to make this go away? And I don't think we're at that point now, because this is their entire name brand. Second of all, they're in the middle of a merger. And so while this merger is happening, a $40 billion with a B dollar merger is happening, you don't want to settle on any type of claim, but you also don't want to have this hanging out there pending. On top of that, they got the lawsuit from Ken Paxton, the attorney general in Texas, sued them for almost $400 million. And so they're fighting a number of lawsuits in multiple locations. But if I'm Tylenol, I normally say you're settling. I'm standing behind the science, because if you can admit and settle out of court that, yes, your brand is known to cause something like autism, your product
is just opening yourself up even more.
It's diminished, like irreparable. Mm-hmm. You can't bring that back.
Yeah, Ken View, the owner of Tylenol, selling to Kimberly, merging with Kimberly Clark. All right, we're going to have to leave that one there. That is order in the court today, as we certainly appreciate you, Khalif, as always. Appreciate your insight and expertise on everything legal, and always chatting with you as well, my friend. Good to see you. Thanks for watching Order in the Court. You're watching Queen City News Plus.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.